Hello again, everybody. This is Steve, coming to you with another episode in my AI in writing series. This one is on using AI art in writing. Um, One thing I'll do as a little disclaimer right at the front is that I'm not an AI expert. As I stated in my other video, I'm a layman, and I am giving this to you from a layman's perspective. If you want to get into the nuts and bolts of this, you'll probably want to hunt down somebody who's really good with the stuff and really knows how it works. But since I figure most of you are just going to operate on the same level as me, I'll give you everything I've learned so far with this and go from there. Anyways, AI art is an interesting animal. Like I say, there's different generation engines out there. There's DALL-E, which is my current favorite. Google has some stuff. Microsoft has some stuff. I think theirs is through Copilot, but they also may use DALL-E. I don't remember. I know they did for a while. So you're still going to end up using DALL-E, but in a different way. There's Midjourney. Last I checked on Midjourney, it's doing better, but DALL-E's still doing better than it is. Google's is coming up, but it's still got a ways to go. But anyways, there's different engines out there, different ones you can try. The thing to understand, though, with AI art is, as I mentioned in my initial thing, there are a lot of legalities you got to consider. Like I say, if you're using it for yourself, if you're using it under fair use, you're not using it for production, knock yourself out. The courts will stand behind you if it's fair use, for personal use under the fair use laws. You start putting it into production and you open up a whole can of worms and start, dancing a two-step through a overpopulated minefield. So, if you get my meaning with that. So, if you're doing production artwork, or anything where you're going to be generating profit, tread very, very carefully. If you're doing free stuff, knock yourself out. If you're doing stuff for yourself, you're doing stuff for your wiki where you're not making money, knock yourself out. Like I say, the courts will side with you on fair use, especially if you're just using it as reference art. So that's one big thing to consider when you start out. The next thing to consider, like I say, is the engine. The engine being, the system that actually generates the art. There's, like I said, I've already mentioned, Midjourney, DALL-E, some others like that. With Midjourney, it's run through Discord, which has its advantages, has its disadvantages. If you want something that will keep a historical record and keep it really well, then Midjourney will have that, but the quality of the art is kind of, I would say, it's better than it was. You're not getting 10-fingered monstrosities and things with 3 tails and stuff like that running around. That's coming around, but they still have, it still has some problems doing artwork. DALL-E's better. I've seen it derp out too. So, and as a matter of fact, I've seen every AI engine derp out in one way or another. It's just different. They each do it in different ways. Midjourney tends to be with appendages, like a horse with 3 tails and something that's got 6 fingers or 2 thumbs or something like that. If for some reason it can't understand those concepts, but it is getting better. DALL-E does a great job with natural human form and nature and stuff, but then it kind of struggles in other areas trying to visualize certain things. So I say, though, depending on what you need and what your requirements are for the type of artwork you're doing, try them all. Go out, give them all a spin, see what you come up with, and find the one that's best for you. Another thing to do is to look up the usage guides. When I say usage guides, it's like to use Midjourney for an example, because I used them a bunch when I was first getting started. There are style guides where you can say, I want this to be done with a Unreal Engine 5 style, which some of my artwork on my wiki is done with Unreal Engine 5. Some's just done generically, where Midjourney just randomly picked a style based on what my prompt was, and created the artwork that way. Really though, I mean, I think, unless you're just looking for something generic, learn the styles, learn how they look. You can actually mix and match styles. You can blend styles, and that's not more than just Midjourney. You can do that with DALL-E and all the others. I think it was. I think it's Open Diffusion. You can kind of do the same. I think it's called Open Diffusion, something Diffusion. But anyways, you can do the same thing with that. You can do styles on that, and it'll copy certain styles like pencil art, watercolors, Unreal Engine, etc. like that. And you can use those for your various pieces of example art and filler art, free art, etc. like that. Another thing to look at is, with those is how to do prompts, because every AI bot is different. Some of them, you'll have image weights. Some of them you'll have image styles. It's like image weights but different. And image weights are basically going into, like, I want a forest with blue trees and something, and then you tell it in the style of this artist plus this artist, but I want it more in in this style than the other one. You have two different styles, but you want it to lean more towards the one than the other. And I'm oversimplifying that, but that's something you can do, and the AI does a pretty decent job of it. Figuring out how much to do in there and adjust it and stuff. It's still not perfect, because remember, it's a robot, it's a program, it's software. It's not going to think like we do. It's not going to have the same creative potential that we have. What it's going to do is it's going to take from its library of styles and artwork and things like that and create an image for you. For like example, if the only thing it's got in its memory for dogs is a Kerberos, one of the three-headed dogs, all your dogs are going to be three-headed. Doesn't matter what you tell it, like, I just want it to have one head. It's going to have three heads, period. So it's going to depend on what the background data is. You might get some art piece depending on your prompt that looks like something out of DeviantArt. Don't be surprised if you get that, because DeviantArt was crawled pretty heavily, which goes back to the legalities, but I'll leave it at that. Like I say, learn those styles, learn the commands. There's custom commands for like image resolution, like 16 by 9, 5 by 8, things like that you're going to want to include in your prompts, because a normal image generated without the resolution or the size is square by nature. So you can, you tell it, say like if you decide to do an old TV image and it needs to be 4:3 resolution, like with Midjourney, it's -AR, I think it is, and then space, and then you tell it like 16:9. But on DALL-E, you say, I need this image in 16 by 9 resolution. So again, different prompt, same result. If you don't give it something, it gives you a square image. So know the special commands. Like, here's one that's interesting that DALL-E doesn't do it. Like I say, DALL-E gives you a better image, but Midjourney has more toys. Like on Midjourney, you can take an image, generate it. You can spin new images off of that. You say, like, give me version 4 or version 3 of your original image. Create new versions off of that. You can't do that with DALL-E. Not that I know of. I haven't found a way to do it yet. But you can do that in Midjourney. And then you can tell it to expand it. Let's say you did your original and you forgot to do it at 16 by 9 resolution. Well, you can actually tell it to expand the image to 16 by 9 using what you already had, and it will add to the image without changing the core image. You have a lot more, like I said, you have a lesser quality image, but you have more flexibility in editing and control. So, like I say, if image quality is not a huge thing with you, Midjourney is a good one. If you got to have really good artwork, then probably DALL-E. Like I say, less toys, but there are ways to get around that. So again, that's something else you got to consider. and your prompts. Your prompts are the core of all of this. Once you get past the style, you get past the resolution, you get past some of the other stuff, your prompts are key. A good prompt generally gives you a good image. I can't say it will every time, but it generally will get you a good image. Sometimes, though, it will not. And also, the more generic the image, the more you're leaving it to the bot to decide what to do. And believe me, I've gotten some real winners off of that, and I've gotten some stuff that just, looks like a bad case of crack, I'll tell you. Like somebody gave you a bad hit of crack cocaine or something, just really messed up stuff. But the better your prompt, the more detailed, the more voluminous it is, up to a point, the better your image is. Now, one thing I found with like Midjourney, once you get past, I think, 20 words and 80 characters, the impact that the new words, the extra words in your prompt have go down, and it goes down precipitously. With DALL-E, you can have really long prompts. I think it's something like 256 or 356 characters, and which like just blows Midjourney right out of the water. But you can get get pretty granular in a description like that, and it does not lose weight as the prompt gets bigger, like it does on Midjourney. And Stable Diffusion, that's what the other one was I was thinking of. And Stable Diffusion, that's locked in at 80 characters. I think it is 75 or 80 characters. So that one you're kind of, you can run it yourself, and you're not having to pay for it, but at the same time you're kind of limited in that aspect on the size of your prompts. But like I say, the prompts are key to this. And if you have like ChatGPT, that uses DALL-E, if you want to go into one of the I'm trying to think what they're called, but I think they just call them GPTs or something like that. But anyways, they have an image generator that is kind of like regular DALL-E, but it's done through ChatGPT, which is weird. I don't know if it's like full DALL-E and ChatGPT is just the front end, or if GPT kind of sits in the middle between the two of them, but it does a pretty good job. What I like using GPT for in that case is I will come up with the idea, I will describe it the best I possibly can, and then I will let GPT run with it, and then I take that idea and I might refine it and say, okay, let's, here's my edit. Can you refine this further? And you might go back and forth for a bit until you get the full prompt that you really like. Run that through DALL-E, and there's your image. You can do the same thing with Midjourney, but it's a lot shorter. Like I say, you're looking at like 80 characters before it kind of starts backing up and going, yeah, your prompt's too long. Which is kind of the same as Stable Diffusion. The idea that it's limited on the prompt size. But prompts are, like I said, getting back to what I was saying, this prompts are key. And what I recommend when you first get into this, experiment. Pay the money and an experiment. I did it on like a low budget, like with Midjourney when I first started out. I did it on the $10 account. And let me tell you this much, first couple of months, I burned up all of my credits like super fast. But I learned a bunch. And by the by the third, fourth, fifth month, I was just kicking some really good stuff. Of course, then I found DALL-E, and all the Midjourney stuff looked like garbage. But and then even with DALL-E, I had a little bit of a learning curve. And another thing to understand too with AI art and the prompts, use them regularly, even if you're not generating stuff for a book or a project or whatever like that, or personal art or whatever like that. Use it regularly, because I found out it's a perishable skill. Like all the stuff I learned, I ended up like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm going to sit back. 6 months later, I came back and, oh crap, I'm back to square one on how I'm doing my prompts, because I had forgotten all the stuff I'd learned. So it's a perishable skill, which means even if you're not using it regularly, you still need, or if you don't have a present use for it, you still need to go in and practice, which is, that was a bit of a surprise for me that doing prompts is a perishable skill, but considering it's an art form and art isn't, any art skill, including writing, is a perishable skill. Just knowing that, now I'm in here like, oh, okay, well, I'll just go back in here, relearn everything, but then I'm going to sit down and periodically run image prompts and keep myself in practice, even if I don't use the art that it generates. Although there's been a few of them that I, just experimenting around and, oh, heck, that's a really good piece of art, So, and I just throw it in my pile and keep it for something else. But, I don't think what else. Oh, that's one thing I was doing. This is even before I had AI art, when I was just grabbing images off the internet as example art. And even before then, when I was just like, I go through books and newspaper articles and stuff and find images that I thought worked for the idea I had in my head of a character or a location or whatever like that. But anyways, you set it up next to you, especially when you're initially describing the item or the person or the scene or whatever like that. Set it up next to you and look at it and just like write it like you're explaining it to somebody, which you technically are. You're explaining it to the reader. Write it in a way that you can take what you're seeing both on the paper and in your mind and put it on the paper in a way that they can see it as well. Well, I just had another thought too. There's something else that you need to do. It's thinking here. Give me just a second. Oh man, it was something else that I know you got to do when you're writing, and it came in one side and went out the other. That's what you get for being old. Oh, that's what it was. AI art is also really good if you want to create an example piece, not a cover, not a book cover, an example piece for your artist. Because like if you, and I think I showed it in a different video, the example art I had for my Empire series. I created 3 covers using AI, and it took a bit of work, but I got what I wanted. That I can throw it at my artist, who's Don Samora. He does all my cover art. I can take it and go, okay, this is the idea I have. Create a cover from this, and then I let him create the original work. And it may match what my idea is, and it may not. But it's used as a foundation, so they have a better idea what you're describing. Because you could create this prompt, and like you're talking about bunnies in a meadow, you see brown rabbits with cute little fluffy faces and long ears and all that other stuff, and the other guy, and your artist sees white rabbits that look like something out of Alice in Wonderland. So that helps not just you visualize the cover and the world and the book and stuff like that. It helps them with what you're looking for, and all it costs you is just the time and the gens, and the gen being one generation of an image. It for you, doing all those gens and keep working and working and working till you find the design you want, and then giving it to them. Now it's easier for them to take what you're thinking of and put it into something final for the book cover. So that's another good use for it right there. And again, I'm covering this in general. I'm telling you the areas to look for, the things you want to do, etc. like that. If you want to get granular with this, there's a lot better people out there that can help you get really, really granular with it. If you just need something as a general guide, something as a visual guide or a visual cue or whatever like that while you're writing, what I've given you should be plenty enough. It depends on how deep you need to go into this to make a good story. And that's primarily where the AI or the AI in art comes, or the AI art in writing comes in, is what does it do, what can you do to help you be a better author. So anyways, that's my 20,000 foot view of this as far as AI art in relationship to writing. If you guys have any other questions, concerns, you want me to talk about this more, just let me know. And if not, then we'll go on to the next part of this, which is using chatbots in your writing. But that'll be the next episode. So catch you guys later.